So, you want to stop the Islamization of Norway. And of course, similar groups exist in all other European countries with the same objective, to stop the Islamization of their countries. My message today is that this is probably not going to be possible. It should have been done decades ago, and I think it's too late for that now. I'll come back to the consequences of this later on. It's often, when you talk about Islam, Islam is often compared to National Socialism or Nazism. And people say, well, we could defeat Nazism in 1945, so why can't we eliminate or defeat Islam? But you have to realize that these two totalitarian ideologies are vastly different. You could, once you had, the Allies had smashed the Nazi Germany, Nazism broke down all over Europe. Vidkun Quisling could not have continued his government of Norway, even if he wanted to, even if he had some support to do it, because the center, which was Berlin, had been conquered and Nazism faded away. And all of a sudden there were very few Nazis. They had mysteriously disappeared and tried to forget all about their past. But you cannot defeat Islam that way. There is no center that you can conquer and hope to cause Islam to break down. There is no high command that you can wipe out and hope to defeat Islam. Islam is not bound by any geographical locality. It can shift from place to place, and it is not bound by any organized body of men. Islam is lodged in every Muslim's head, and it travels with every believing Muslim. So let's say that, for example, we managed to wipe out the despicable government of Iran or Saudi Arabia. It doesn't make any difference. It would slow down the process of Islamization, but it will not stop it. As long as Muslims believe that the Quran is the true word of God, and as long as they think that Muhammad is the perfect human being whose very actions and sayings should serve as a norm for all men for all time, as long as that situation exists, Islam will exist and Islam will spread. In other words, there is no military solution to Islam. We can forget that. One of the major problems we are facing is that people have an incomplete understanding of what jihad is. Jihad meaning holy war. Being Westerners, we tend to think that jihad is mainly a matter of military action, murder, terrorism, etc. But that's just a tiny aspect of what jihad is. Jihad can be waged with a whole number of options and measures. And some of those we don't even recognize as warfare. Take the veil, for example, the idea that believing women should wear a headscarf or something more heavy. What's the purpose of that? Well, the purpose, of course, is to demonstrate to infidel men that these women are out of bounds. You do not approach them. You do not ask them to dance. You certainly do not suggest that you have sex, because then you'll be killed for having offended Islam. There's also another purpose to the veil and any other kind of Muslim uniform. It creates a spontaneous separation between one kind of people and another kind of people that go right through the entire society. We can see it in our schools, we can see it in our living areas, swimming arrangements have to be changed, etc., etc. So it's a weapon. The veil is a weapon, one way of conducting warfare, and we don't realize that. We also have an incomplete understanding of what Sharia law is. When we think of law in our countries, we think of a system of articles, paragraphs that are passed into legislation by the parliament or some other body. That is not the case with Sharia law. Sharia law is not something that men implement. It exists already, and it is followed to the extent that our secular governments are not strong enough to prevent it. In other words, Sharia is a spontaneous application of what can be gauged from the Quran and the Prophet's Sunnah. I don't know if you are familiar with a book called The Reliance of the Traveler, which is the authentic Sharia law book. It's about 1,200 pages long. And why? Because it has rules and regulations for every bit of human life and society you can think of. From the way you are supposed to go to the bathroom, to the way you treat slaves. Of course, slavery is still a part of Sharia, and anything else you can think of. Relations between men and women and children, and property rights and whatnot. All of this will be implemented and is being implemented, for example, in the Danish ghettos, where the police dare not come unless they have about 30 men well armed. And how can they control it? You have a population in some cases in Denmark where 10,000 Muslims live in exclusively Muslim areas. They never see an infidel, they never see an Dane. They live by their own rules. So that's another thing we have to consider. And of course, once this system of a dual society, one kind of society for us normal Danes and Norwegians, and another kind of society for the believing Muslims, once that is put into place, there's no way back. Not unless we want to employ means that no civilized man would ever consider. And I'm not going to mention what I'm thinking about here, but I'm quite sure that none of us would do such a thing. So, what can we expect? I started out by saying that it's too late to save Norway, too late to save Denmark, Germany, France, Holland, Belgium, etc. But that means we cannot save the whole country. What we can do is to save parts of our territory. We can save parts of our population to the extent that we stick together and prepare for a life and a society we had never learned of before, or heard of before. We never thought we would come to this. But I think that is the only way. It also means that we have to prepare to defend ourselves. We are certainly not going to make physical attacks on Muslims. That is outside of our culture. But we have to prepare to defend ourselves. The state cannot do it because the state will not be powerful enough to control Muslims once they make up 10, 15, 20% population. No way they can do it. And there's no historical example from the last 1400 years that this has been possible. Once the Muslim population exceeds, say, 5%, it's game over. And we have to look forward to times that may be quite interesting, but also quite challenging. So far, this is what I have to say.